Welcome to Won't You Be My Gamer. Today we are getting deep into quantum physics, joined by our guest, the Assistant Professor of the Philosophy of Physics at Chapman University, Dr. Emily Adlam. Emily, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.
We're going to try to understand every single word you say here on the show today. And we're playing a game that is about kind of quantum physics in its own gamey way. Nicole, what are we playing?
We are playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And yeah, there's some mechanics in this game that are going to have us kind of zooming through different, like that just then. Like, oh, well.
Oh, I mean, and
that's a portal too. That's a portal too, if you think about it.
Emily, what is the quantum measurement problem?
Okay, so the quantum measurement problem refers to the fact that if you look at what the theory of quantum mechanics says, it looks as though when we do a measurement, something very special happens. The wave function undergoes what's called a collapse. And that seems very weird because this is a thing that doesn't happen at any other time. It's not there in the sort of rest of the theory. It's just a sort of measurement-specific thing, which seems very hard to understand, right? Because like a measurement is a physical event. It seems like it should work the same way. It should be described by the same kind of physical theory. So the measurement problem is about trying to understand, like, how can it be that like suddenly something new happens during a measurement, or is that a misunderstanding and that's not right after all?
And what are we measuring?
Anything. So specifically, anytime you do like an experiment in the lab trying to test quantum mechanics, you'll do a bunch of stuff, you'll allow the experiment to proceed, and then at the end you have to measure it to see the result. So you'll measure like the position of a particle, or the spin of a particle, or some property of something that will tell you the result of your experiment. And so it seems like at that point when you do your measurement, the quantum wave function collapses, something sort of brand new has happened. That's a process that happens at no other time. So the measurement problem is about trying to make sense of like how that could be the case.
Is there anything happening in the game that would kind of fit in or describe what you're talking about?
How often do you hit boxes with a wrench?
Yeah.
That's something
There's a lot of things collapsing in this game. So in some sense, that's like a wave function collapse.
Okay, cool.
How does quantum measurement and the problems with it relate to the multiverse theory?
Yeah, so the multiverse, the many worlds interpretation is one proposal that people have made for how to solve the measurement problem. So the reason the wave function seems like it has to collapse in a measurement is because if you just look at the standard theory on its own, what the theory seems to say is that like all of the outcomes are kind of occurring simultaneously in some sense, whereas obviously the outcomes. So the many worlds theory is trying to solve the problem by saying maybe in fact all of the outcomes do really occur. They just kind of branch and go off into different branches of the world, and different versions of you see all the different outcomes. So that means maybe we don't have to have a wave function collapse. Instead of collapsing down to one outcome, we just keep all of the outcomes and put them in different branches of the world.
So when you say the many versions, do you mean like the most micro scenarios, like a leaf falls from a tree and in a different universe it would float to the left as opposed to the right? Like we're getting down to the molecular level with these differences?
Yes. So it's very plausible that if the many worlds theory were true, like basically any event that you can imagine is going to involve some kind of quantum branching. So any event that could go several different ways will in fact go both of those ways. So for example, when you make a decision, it's going to be one branch of the world where you make one decision, and it's going to be another branch of the world where you make the other decision. So you get to do both things in some sense.
So is this like the multiverse which we see in superhero movies where like there's one me in this world and then there's world 686 where there's another me there?
Yes. So obviously the superhero films are a little bit unrealistic about the way they treat it, but like I think the basic idea is the same, that there's going to be all these different versions of you across all these different branches of the universe. Having made different decisions, various different events have turned out differently, so it's kind of exploring, in some sense, the multiverse is like exploring all of the different ways your life could possibly have gone.
So sliding doors.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, you're traveling through rifts in this?
I am, yeah. So I don't think it's as much multiple dimensions so much as creating rifts within this world and pulling myself through them. So I don't know how that fits into that.
It's a bit like quantum tunneling, maybe?
Oh yes, tell me more about quantum tunneling.
Quantum tunneling is a phenomenon where you have a quantum system which is like confined in some region, And sort of classically, you would think that it would just stay in that region because there's some kind of barrier that it shouldn't be able to pass through. But there's always going to be some small probability, according to quantum mechanics, that it just kind of like magically jumps across the barrier and ends up on the other side. And so it's somehow tunneled through this barrier that it shouldn't be able to pass.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
maybe that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
Quantum tunneling through these.
it seems like so much of quantum physics is this shouldn't be able to happen,
Yes.
but it's happening.
Right, yes, that's
And
why
like,
it's so
how do
hard to
we
interpret.
figure out how
Yeah.
and why?
Yes. Well, yeah, that's what the measurement problem is all about, really. All these things that happen in the theory, and we can't figure out like what kind of reality could possibly be compatible with that.
I feel like Clank's not really doing a lot
No.
here, Nicole.
No.
What is his purpose?
Moral support.
Oh, okay.
Posture reminder. Like whenever I have a backpack, I'm like,
it's a dragon.
oh.
okay, so
okay,
are we in a
yeah.
different universe here where there are dragons?
It does seem like this purple part is like in between worlds.
It seems, I think you're traveling through branches of the multiverse, maybe.
But yeah.
Is that possible? Could you take something from a different universe and bring it into another?
There is like a sort of small possibility that if you had like really fine experimental control, you could get two branches to kind of interfere with each other and like affect each other in certain ways. But it certainly wouldn't be the case that you would just be like hopping from one to the other as is happening here.
What would happen if that happened, if they interacted?
Would it be like new branches?
I think the interference would probably, in some sense, destroy everything that's happening inside both of them and produce like a sort of a new thing, which is some fusion of both of them. And the people in them, it would not be a good time for the people, I should imagine.
Yeah. Because like in film, there's kind of like two versions of like time travel. It's like the Back to the Future version where like you can mess up time and you can prevent yourself from being born by going through these like dimensions.
Yeah.
Or there's like the Terminator where like that loop was always going to happen. Like John was always going to send Kyle back to meet his mom. You know, like and so that's interesting. Like how does
It's inevitable.
yeah? So does quantum physics kind of like lean towards one idea more than the other?
Yes, if you interpret quantum mechanics as involving retrocausality, which some people do, certainly I think the most plausible way to think about that retrocausality is going to be in the second way that you've suggested, because the first way leads to a bunch of paradoxes which are very hard to solve. So if you say there's just one timeline and it's all sort of internally self-consistent from the start, that's going to avoid those sort of nasty paradoxes.
That's cool.
What exactly is retrocausality?
Retrocausality is just when an event in the present causes something in the past.
Yeah, and is that pretty well like subscribed to in the scientific community, or do people disagree with like because I know there are different interpretations and theories, like the many worlds, there's the Copenhagen interpretation. Like, who's on board with what?
Yes, well, so retrocausality is a fairly niche view, I would say. There are some people who are very interested in it as a way to maybe avoid having non-local effects and have retrocausality instead. So there's been a bunch of research recently trying to explore if that's going to work. But yeah, I would say that's not the most mainstream view. The many worlds interpretation, I think, is more mainstream and is becoming increasingly popular, I think, for various reasons.
Is that the one that you personally subscribe to and study? And
No, it is not. I think it can't be right, unfortunately.
oh my God,
Tell us more.
my mind's blown here. Sorry, I need to take a minute.
So how come? So why isn't that your theory?
Yeah.
The problem with the many worlds interpretation, in my opinion, is that it makes it very hard to understand probability. Quantum mechanics, the content of the theory is that it predicts the probabilities for things to happen, right? But if you have an interpretation of it which says that all of the outcomes always happen, it's kind of really hard to understand what those probabilities could possibly mean if like everything always happens. So that seems like it kind of undermines like the whole point of the theory, which was to predict probabilities for things. So that's why I find that sort of internally inconsistent.
Do you ever just have an existential crisis trying to understand and think of these things on such a massive scale? Like there's an unlimited number of possibilities. Like the human brain, I think, is not built to fathom this.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think like the further we go away from the kind of regimes in which our brains were like evolved to function, the less and less it becomes possible to have a sort of intuitive grasp of it. So we can use sort of math and various other tools to like try to get some sense, but it certainly moves further and further away from things that you could like visualize and understand.
So what is your preferred interpretation then? Or do you
Yes.
have one? Or are you still...
I think none of the sort of big mainstream approaches is right. I think there are some less mainstream approaches which I find like appealing and that they need more work and development, but they seem more likely to work to me. So various kinds of relational views and all at once views seem to me like probably the right direction to go in, although I don't know if we've like figured out the right one yet.
Are there any of those approaches that you do feel this kind of affinity for, or this spark?
I think definitely the idea that we need to think about quantum mechanics in an all-at-once way, incorporating some kind of retrocausality. I'm pretty confident that that like general idea is correct, but the details of exactly how to implement that, I don't know. And so that's something that I and many other people are still working on.
One of the things in my own personal research I kept coming across was mention of the observer.
Yeah.
Who is the observer? Are we the observer?
Yeah, well, certainly the observer includes at least us. The observer gets mentioned because, like, what is a measurement? Well, a measurement involves an observer observing something. So at the very least, we need that, like, wave function collapse or whatever the analog of that needs to occur when an observer like us performs an observation. And then I guess part of the question is, like, how big is that class? If there are wave function collapses, can other things collapse the wave function too? Can cats collapse it? Can, like, bacteria collapse it? Like, what counts as an observer for the purpose of collapsing the wave function?
A friend of mine was telling me about this experiment where there was some kind of like particle or wave function, something, where when they directed a camera at it, it like appeared, but otherwise it was not appearing.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Might be talking about the double slit experiment,
Yes,
maybe?
100%. That's exactly what it is. So you're familiar with
Yes,
it?
I am, yeah.
Can you explain it better than I did?
Yes. So the double slit experiment, you have some particles, and you have a screen set up with two slits in, and you send your particles toward the screen, and then sort of beyond the screen, you have a camera where you like see where the particles end up. So if you look at the sort of pattern of where the slits, where the particles land on the camera, you see a sort of interference pattern. You see them kind of spread out all across the screen in a way which you can sort of only account for if you think of the particles as being sort of like waves that pass through both of the slits together rather than going through one of the slits, which already is pretty weird. But the even weirder thing is that if instead of having a camera sort of beyond the slits, you instead put your camera like right next to one of the slits, so you're checking to see where the particle goes. When you do that, you will find the particle acts like a particle and goes through just one slit.
Yes. And does anyone know why that is?
You can do a calculation in the formalism of quantum mechanics and predict this will happen. So, like,
Okay.
mathematically, fine. We know what the like mathematics is. I think explaining what is physically happening is a bit more complicated, and that's exactly what all these sort of solutions to the measurement problem are trying to do. They're trying to like give different possible physical stories of what is actually going on with quantum mechanics.
So I've noticed that, but like multiverse movies have never been more popular.
Yes,
every
they're
show has
extremely
them.
popular. Yes.
Is that because we're starting to learn so much more about it from a scientific level so that it's digestible? Is it a coincidence? Did someone from another universe come here to try and like soften the blow by like putting it in movies first?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the many worlds interpretation has been around for a while, but has certainly been growing in prominence. I think certainly a lot of philosophers and physicists take it pretty seriously nowadays. So it could be related to that. I think multiverses are also just a convenient fictional device as well for various reasons. So it's a sort of mix of both of those things.
Yeah.
Are there any movies, be it about quantum mechanics or time travel, that you're like, I feel like they got it right? I always see Primer cited as this is the one that people think is pretty close.
My favorite time travel film is Arrival.
Oh, it's a great one.
I think Arrival is exactly right in what it says about time, in a way that most time travel films aren't trying to be accurate like that. So yeah, I think that's really well done.
Do people ask you about Interstellar a lot?
They do, yes, yeah, yes. I think Interstellar quite offensive to physicists.
Really?
My view.
Oh, I would love to know why.
Well, it's because like the solution to quantum gravity is love. Yeah. And I just feel like if it were that easy, we would have already figured it out.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's a hard problem.
Oh, Murph is love, Murph.
That's so funny though when you say it like that because that's exactly
It's
it.
truly,
Yes.
yeah. Who are the kind of like rock stars in the history of quantum mechanics?
Ooh.
I mean, you, I assume.
You, of course, new rock star. I see the name John Bell bandied about.
John Bell is a big figure for sure, yeah.
What did he sort of posit?
So Bell's biggest thing is what's called Bell's inequality. So basically he proved this theorem showing that if your theory is local, if all correlations can be explained by sort of common causes in the past and there's no sort of spooky non-local effects, then there's a certain kind of experiment which is going to have to obey a certain inequality. So you can test to see if your theory is local by trying to violate that inequality. And it turns out that quantum mechanics does violate that inequality. So what that means is that quantum mechanics is not local, and that there are sort of spooky effects at a distance in quantum mechanics that can't be explained by like things propagating in an ordinary way through space-time.
And when you say spooky in a science
Yeah.
way,
Yes.
does that different than the way I think of spooky?
Ghosts.
The spooky is a quote from Einstein. Einstein was kind of against non-locality. He's like, I don't like these spooky non-local effects. So that's why we use that word. But yeah, that is not a very scientific point being made there. It's just kind of like an intuition that this seems weird and we don't like it. So yeah, people are still trying to figure out if it's really compulsory to have non-locality or if there are ways to like avoid Bell's conclusion somehow.
How you doing, Nicole?
I'm doing good.
So you're with this guy now, huh?
Yeah, I'm with this guy. I don't know much about him, but I got a good feeling. And I trust him. And I would do anything to continue following the goalposts.
What is
Like,
he
I'm just gonna
leading you
follow
to?
it. Don't know.
Oh, well, I mean,
Yeah.
seems like a good idea to follow
Yeah.
him then.
And what is quantum physics leading you to? It's just like these are the questions. Like, let's say that there are like huge, movements in findings in quantum physics and quantum mechanics. What would that help to do? Like, what would the next step be if we did solve for some things?
Yes, I mean, I think the thing that that most sort of work is focused on now is quantum gravity, which is about trying to make quantum mechanics fit together with Einstein's theory of relativity. We have various approaches that are attempting to do that, and none of them are fully sort of functional quite yet, and we don't know which one is right. So there's a lot of efforts in those fields to make that work. What would we use that for? I mean, the main things that quantum gravity is good for are describing things like the very early universe, the Big Bang, and the center of black holes, what happens in those regimes. So maybe not of immediate relevance to anyone's everyday life, but certainly interesting from a sort of theoretical point of view.
Okay, so if you're trying to solve the quantum gravity problem and you're testing for relatively all these things, are you doing math equations mostly, or are you using like a particle accelerator? Are there tools that are in your arsenal that you're working with?
Yeah, so I mean, most research on quantum gravity is theoretical because certainly the most obvious kinds of experiments you could do would require like such high energy that we just can't do them right now. So that's sort of just beyond our current capabilities. Maybe we'll build bigger colliders and do them eventually. There are also some really intriguing proposals for like low energy quantum gravity experiments, which might give us some information. And they're a bit sort of technically hard to do, but like much more achievable, I think, than building another enormous collider. Mm-hmm. So there's some hope that like in the next few years, people will find a way to make some of those low energy experiments work.
I'm sure you're familiar with, I think it was 2016, the CERN Hadron Collider, some like squirrel
Ferret,
or
maybe?
ferret got
Yeah.
inside of it, and now there's this whole theory, conspiracy theory kind of, that I think is fun, that it created this was the sort of inciting point of different universes, and now we've kind of like branched off from there.
Oh, this is the dark timeline.
Yes,
I see.
and now we're in this dark timeline because of that
Because
event.
of the ferret.
Can you break my heart and tell me why that is complete BS?
Or no, because
Or-
it's possible.
Because I really would like an explanation.
I mean, I don't know what specific theory of physics would predict that. I mean, if you believe the many worlds interpretation, there's for sure a bunch of branching happening, but you don't.
would
It
be
just
the
happens all
squirrels.
the time. You
Yeah.
don't need squirrels to fall into the Large Hadron Collider
Squirrel's
to make it happen.
interpretation.
Yeah.
So, is there some scientist working in secret to develop a rift, like what Nicole's seeing in the game here? Could that ever exist?
Like, watch. Whoa.
It depends what it's supposed to be. Like, if it's a quantum tunneling device, then we can already do that for particles. Not sure it would ever be feasible for people, but you never say never.
Never say never. So we're taking that as a maybe.
Yeah. Have you played the game Portal?
I have.
Oh, okay.
So how do you feel about portal guns? Because to me, that's something that like I can think, oh, that does seem possible. That does seem like that's something that could affect me in my lifetime, which is crazy. But like, is that crazy?
Will we have a portal gun?
And there is a thing called quantum teleportation. So, like, plausibly, I guess you could imagine that the portal guns are doing something a bit like that.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Sure.
Thank you so much for joining us, Emily. Is there anywhere online that people can learn more about your research or hear you talk and lecture about quantum mechanics?
Yeah, I have a TED Talk that people can look at, or some interviews on YouTube that people might be interested in. And my work is also all online if people are interested in reading about that.
So go check out Emily's work. And thank you so much for supporting the show. We truly appreciate you donating and sharing our work and just being gamers with us.
Yeah, thank you.
You may have noticed that we have moved to a new channel, youtube.com/@won'tyoubemygamer. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed. And if you're just seeing this video now out in the wild, you can subscribe right here. Nicole, how can people support the show?
PBSSocal.org is the place to go. You're going to find out how to donate, and any amount helps. We are so appreciative of everyone who has been able to and who will still do it soon. We appreciate it, and head over to pbssocal.org/gamer.
I just hear that controller going wild.